All right, time for another edition, Sharp or Square. It's the CCO of the Action Network, Chad Millman, my buddy, all odds provided by DraftKings. So Warren Sharp sent me something over the week that was really fascinating. Underdogs are not doing well this year. And Warren Sharp not only theorizes, but indicates that the holding calls defensively have gone down sharply. And so when you look at the numbers of the holding calls defensively, it's now understood that you're allowed to grab receivers down the field. It's just understood. It was not 3 years ago. We would all as fans go, that's a penalty. Now you can do it while the ball's in the air if it's not, lurching at the player and disrupting him. And so what does that mean? My theory is that will punitively punish the mediocre to below average quarterbacks. Daniel Jones can't even get a touchdown this month. So the Tannehills, the Daniel Jones, the backups, the gap between starters and stars and backups, Tannehill and Mahomes now, 5 years ago, you could be competitive. The gap now between Daniel Jones and Mahomes, it's like junior varsity. Underdogs are not covering. The best quarterback, if Baker is better than Derek Carr, and I think he is, leads in 7 divisions. The exception is Brock Purdy. He's not as good as Stafford, but he's better than Arizona's backup and arguably better than Geno Smith. So my point being is I've always been a fan of underdogs, but increasingly this year, my winning bets are on superior quarterbacks covering. And Warren Sharp detailing, this is really hurting. Scoring's down, but there are more blowouts in 2 years than we've ever had. And the scoring's declining, even for Kansas City, Cincinnati, Baltimore. And so I look at my bets this week, and I think I wouldn't have made these bets a year ago. But I'll throw one at you. Ravens -3 at home against the Lions. So I watched Baltimore. I thought their first half against Tennessee was the single most impressive half of the season by a quarterback in any game. I thought Lamar was spectacular. Detroit has been on a little bit of a streak. They've won on the road. This is a whole different ball game. Baltimore is one of the hardest places to play. I still think the Ravens, I told you last week it was my favorite bet, are undervalued. So again, +3 Detroit hot would have been my pick. I'm going to go Baltimore -3, sharp or square.
So it's definitely sharp. Speaking of, I think Warren's sort of inclination about the holding penalties is interesting. But you could also argue that teams that are underdogs aren't covering not because there's holding calls, but because quarterbacks haven't been making plays. Just look this past weekend. How many downfield throws that could have made a difference did Baker miss? How many downfield throws that could have made a huge difference did Justin Herbert miss? I think there's a combination of a lot of things that are impacting some of these games. Some of them are sort of factors that are not repeatable. Some of them are regression. Some of them are things that are going to be patterns. Certainly, offense is down considerably.
And sacks are up, by the way. So O-line play. So
O-line play is worse.
Quarterbacks with pressure and defensive holding, like the sacks are way up. So if you can escape it, you're okay.
This year, I think right now, the average yards per completion is something like 10.6. It's amongst the lowest in the modern era of the NFL. So certainly defenses are on the up and offenses are leveling out, which probably means when the competition committee meets in the spring, they will figure out a way to make it easier for offenses to score football, But to your point about the Ravens, yeah, it's the sharp side. The line opened at 2.5. Everybody believes the Lions are way overvalued. You're talking about a team that was 11-1 to win the NFC before the season began. They're now down to 6-1, just behind the Dallas Cowboys and obviously the Niners and the Eagles. And you have to take a look for a second at who the Lions have beaten, right? The Panthers, the Bucks. They have not beaten very good teams, the Packers. And meanwhile, the Ravens, they scored 28 points against the Cleveland Browns, which is an historically great defense. And your point about Lamar is spot on. Like, they've been red zone inefficient in certain games. That game against the Steelers, they should have won. We talked about this last week. A lot of drop passes that would have made the difference and put the game away. He's actually playing really well. And Lamar, when he is a short favorite, is actually very, very good against the spread. Bigger favorite, not so much. Short favorite, I like it. Wise guys like it. You're sharp.
All right. Browns -2.5. It is a staggeringly good defense. And I think San Francisco settling for field goals, should have made them, but missed them. And this is a team that is loaded with weapons, a brilliant head coach. Now, yes, it's on the road, but backup quarterbacks are backups for a reason. I said this last week, Gardner Minshew, the analytics said, take the Colts against, the Jags, the better quarterback at home. So I don't love the quarterback situation for Cleveland. I do not trust a backup quarterback against this defense. I think Cleveland's for real. I may be disgusted by Deshaun Watson. He still may play. But if this is 3, I pass. At 2.5, this is a playoff level elite defense. I'd take it sharp or square.
A little trappy, Colin.
Yeah.
Here's the challenge. I agree with you about Gardner Minshew. When I was taking notes on the games last weekend, one of the notes that I took was, have the shoes fallen off? Is Cinderella no longer Cinderella in Gardner Minshew? Because in the games that he had been playing for Anthony Richardson, he had been winning, he had been covering, he had been playing unlike Gardner Minshew, who had gone winless for so long. Last week, a lot of bad turnovers that took them out of that game from the very beginning. Meanwhile, you got the Browns at home, backup quarterback. They just beat the team that everybody thought was the best team in the NFL, that had just beaten up on the Cowboys in an embarrassing fashion, that catapulted Brock Purdy to be 7-1 to win the MVP in the NFL. That's overvalue city, man, versus a team at home that is entirely undervalued because of how badly they played and because of Gardner Minshew. Honestly, for me, it's a pass. Like, I want nothing to do with this game. So if you want to play it, buyer beware.
Eagles -2.5, another favorite, hosting Miami. I think Miami, I've got a pretty good read. They're a heavyweight with a glass chin. If you punch them back, can get a rush with 4, they fold pretty quickly. Lane Johnson should play. That's a more comfortable quarterback against a less comfortable quarterback. Miami will score. But if you look at their defensive front for Miami and the offensive front, if Lane Johnson plays, this could be ball control dominant. I'm going to take, for the record, Philadelphia, night game at home. Watch the Phillies games lately. Like, it's just different. I'm going to take Eagles -2.5, sharp or square.
Totally sharp. The truth is, this line opened at 1.5 and moved up to 2. Now it's at 2.5. It is a pros Joe's game, right? The wise guys are 100% on the Eagles. The Joes, the amateurs, the squares, they're on the Dolphins. And you mentioned 2 things that are really important here. One, Lane Johnson. If he plays, this is a significantly different team. When he doesn't, I think they're 10-22 without Lane Johnson. And when he plays, they're a Super Bowl caliber team. 2, Jalen Hurts against pressure, not so good. Jalen Hurts, when he's not against pressure, with teams that can't pressure him more than 40% of the time, I think he's 20-5 in his career. So you're talking about a Miami Dolphins team that is not great at pressuring the quarterback. And you're talking about an Eagles team that is coming off a loss that they were headed for. You and I have talked about this. Like, the Eagles have been winning because they have a really good head coach. They have a really good quarterback. They have really good weapons on the edges, but they haven't been gelling offensively at all. And also, last week, Jalen Carter didn't play, right? He was resting. So this week he should be back on defense. And the Eagles had that moment like, okay, we've been stealing wins. We were embarrassed by the Jets. We understand better now what we need to do. We're going to come back because that's who we are. The wise guys are on the Eagles.
One more favorite I think I would take. I'm not sure I love it, but I'm going to wait for the injury report. Minnesota's just not that good. I hear about how unlucky they are. Maybe that's not the issue. 49ers off a loss are a really good football team. Minnesota's not. I don't think it's a great locker room. I don't think they create pressure situations for offenses. I think San Francisco will control the ball. At some point, if you do something 5 or 6 weeks in a row, you're not unlucky. It's who you are. And I don't think Minnesota is very good. I think quietly in the building, they're moving off Cousins. They moved off Dalvin Cook. I don't think it's, I just don't, I don't love this team. I'm going to take the Niners -6.5 sharp or square.
You are who your record says you are. Didn't some brilliant coach say that once?
Bill Parcells.
And the Vikings are not a very good football team. They weren't very good last week against a terrible team in the Bears. The only reason they won that game is because a second-string quarterback who's a rookie who had never played came in off the bench, fumbled, scoop and score for the Vikings. That was the difference in the game. Otherwise, the Bears with a backup quarterback win that game, right? And so this has been the sentiment on the Vikings all year. People were fading the Vikings. They did not expect them to win at the rate they did last year. There was going to be regression because of how many one-score games they won. This line has moved up from 6.5. It's at 7. The wise guys are hesitant to come in on big road favorites, but in this case, they are aligned with you.
Is there a better sports month than October? Let me think about that. No. Football's underway, baseball playoffs, basketball, hockey seasons are upon us. Pretty good. While we love watching our favorite teams on TV, there is nothing better than watching sports in person. You know that. I know that. The drama, the crowd, the energy, the adrenaline, it's perfect. And the best way to go to any of these games and see these games in person is GameTime, the fastest growing ticketing app in the United States. GameTime is the only ticket app that gives you peace of mind, okay, with your purchase. That's a biggie. They let you see the view, GameTime does, from your seats. So when you buy it, you know exactly what you're getting with GameTime. Their all-in prices also let you know what you're getting and what you're paying up front. And it takes no time at all. Nobody wants a headache, right? I want tickets. I want them now. I want to buy them. 2 taps, 10 seconds. You can buy your tickets. That's it. 2 taps, all it takes. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with GameTime. So download the GameTime app, quickly create an account, and use the redeem code Colin. That's me. Redeem code Colin, COLIN. $20 if you do that. $20 off your first purchase if you do that. Terms now apply. Again, create an account, the redeem code Colin, COLIN, for $20 off. Download GameTime today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. All right, here's my one dog. I don't love the slate this week for dogs. Chargers +5.5 at Kansas City. Listen, they're in close games. They're a good team. I don't love them situationally. If it's close, I'll take Andy Reid. But I think their personnel matches up very well with Kansas City. It has with Anthony Lynn. It has with Brandon Staley. This feels like kind of a gimme. I don't ever love the Chiefs as a favorite. They're not a high firepower team. Now, they did get their receiver back from the Jets, but it'll take probably a couple of weeks to get him right situated. I'm going to take the Chargers +5.5 sharp or square.
Totally sharp. And look, this is one of those games that's really interesting, right? Because you're talking about it from multiple levels. Are you talking about what you're seeing on the field? Check. You're going to take the Chargers. Are you talking about what you see historically between these two teams? Check. You're going to take the Chargers. Are you talking about what you would see between two teams in the division? Check. You're going to take the Chargers. Are you talking about what you would see from Patrick Mahomes as a favorite of more than 3 points? Check. You're going to take the Chargers. So let's start at the beginning. What you're seeing on the field. Justin Herbert has lost games by 6 or more points 3 times in the past 23 games. He keeps the games close. Their disadvantage is they have a terrible coach who does not put them in a winning position and makes the most inconsistent, awful decisions at the worst possible time for this team to win. He just does, right? So you've got that moving against them, but it's also the talent is so good between what they have in the edges, what they have defensively, what they have in Justin Herbert, they can stay in games. 2, the games between these two teams are always close, right? Justin Herbert has never not covered a 6-point spread. There was one push because they went to overtime and they lost by 6 points in overtime. So it's a great matchup for these two teams. The Chiefs offense has not been gelling. Patrick Mahomes has not found the right rhythm with his receivers yet. And then you're talking about teams in the division in this scenario over the past 20 years, underdogs have covered 60 games above 500. Covering a number like this in the division. Meanwhile, the home team covers at a 47% rate in this position when they are favorites. When they are favorites of 3 or more, it moves down to 44%. And finally, Mahomes, as a favorite of 3.5 or more, is far below 500 because oftentimes when he's a favorite of so many points, it's an impossible number to cover. So in every way, whether it's a trend, whether it's on the field, whether it's a system, the wise guys like the Chargers.
Okay, now I ask you for a game to convince me, and then a game I missed. Green Bay, Denver's fascinating. Aaron Jones comes back. I feel like there are limitations to Jordan Love, but it's a good locker room. It's full of hope. I have a lot of continuity with Denver. I don't know what the identity is. I don't like the locker room. I don't think they do anything well. I do think the Packers do some things well. I would tend to lean all of our odds provided by DraftKings. It's I don't know, what is it now? -1 Green Bay? Is Green Bay +1, -1? I would lean
down to -1.
Okay. I would lean Green Bay. What's sharper square?
The wise guys are on the Broncos. This game opened at 2. It's moved down to 1. It's ugly. They don't love the Broncos, but look, their defense played a little bit better against the Chiefs. The bigger challenge is, should Jordan Love, as a rookie who's played, 5 games as a starter consecutively, who looked good the first couple of games, but has really been missing a lot of open targets. And as much as Matt LaFleur is scheming to get him open targets, if you can't hit the targets, then you can't cover the game. So now he's going on the road as a favorite. There couldn't be less interest. There couldn't be a team more undervalued than the Broncos, because while Sean Payton has been making Russell Wilson look brilliant in the first couple of drives of every game, he kind of craters after that. So a lot of fading of Russell Wilson. I think the biggest fear the wise guys have in betting the Broncos, which is the side they're betting, is from now through the end of the year, are they just going to tank? Are they going to tank and try to get Caleb Williams and compete with the Bears or the Panthers for that #1 overall pick? Because, which the Bears get the Panthers, by the way, because he's got to look at this team and realize we don't have any talent. Our receivers can't get separation. Our quarterback can barely get plays called. He doesn't know what he's doing to get the ball deep. Like it's a pretty nasty situation there, but they're taking the Broncos.
And finally, an ugly game, a game I missed, a game that you really have a strong opinion about or feeling about, but I just didn't discuss.
Oh my God, Colin. Remember last week, I'm like, do me a favor. You want to win, take the Jets +7 against the Eagles.
No. That wasn't ugly. That was the one blazing 5. I should have gone 3-2. I went 2-3. I liked that bet. I didn't take it. It was my last bet. The Jets the last 2 weeks against the Broncos and Eagles was my last bet out. So I like the Jets back-to-back weeks. So that was a good pick and made a lot of sense.
I also wanted you to take the Browns, which was a better pick and made a lot of sense and won. So here's what I'm going to ask you to do. I'm not the kind of guy, Colin, who rubs people's nose in their mistakes. That's not what I do. Okay. Yeah. Here's what I want you to consider. Can I interest you in the New York Giants +2, +2.5, hosting the Washington Commanders? So consider what I just said about the Chargers and the Chiefs and the underdogs historically being the advantage in that situation. And then consider Tyrod Taylor, who, by the way, has one of the lowest interception percentages based on the number of games, minimum attempts that he's had.
Yeah, he doesn't
of
throw
anybody
picks
in NFL history. And then account for the fact that the offensive line played a little bit better and the defense played a little bit better against the Bills, right? So now all of a sudden you've got a Washington team that really, they should have lost to Atlanta. Like they were outplayed in every respect in that game. And to me, there's a two-pronged thing here. One, I kind of like Atlanta as an underdog against Tampa for all the same intra-divisional reasons that I've talked about. And also, I think they were incredibly unlucky in that game with some regression coming because Desmond Ridder made so many mistakes. But also, that highlighted Washington and made them overvalued. Look, they've won some games, but they haven't won well. They haven't been good. They lost to the Bears by 20 points. So I don't know. I think the Giants are going to be the side that the wise guys like this week.
I thought most of the lines, like I think Seattle hosting the Cardinals, I thought initially if it was 6.5, I really like Seattle. I think people have figured out Arizona.
Yep.
So it's 7. So if Blazing 5 was on Monday, I would have taken Seattle. Now the number's not good. My question is, if it's 7, do you take Seattle? 7.5, you don't. 7, do you?
No, I agree with you. And I think what happened with Arizona is like, it's another sort of Cinderella story where the shine has come off a little bit and people
we know what they are.
Right. And honestly, the biggest challenge for them, they lost James Conner. Like he was bull rushing over everybody, right? And he was really powering their offense. And without him, they really don't have any weapons that scare anybody. So to me, 7 is a pass. If you could have gotten it at 6.5, like you could still get San Francisco if you can get it at 6.5. I think those are the two sort of bigger favorites. The other game that's really interesting, and this one is like, remember for years we've been doing segments like this together. And every year I'm telling you, you got to take the Jags when they were terrible. They're plus 13.5 on the road. You got to take the Jags. That's what the wise guys are going to do. The New England Patriots have become the Jaguars.
I can't. I told you I can't. When I can't watch a team, I can't bet them.
So you can watch the Green Bay Denver game?
Fascinated by Sean Payton and Russell Wilson. Fascinated. And is Jordan Love going to make it or not? I mean, if Jordan Love is a lousy Sunday, we have to be honest here. Sitting for 3 years, completing 55% of his throws with Matt LaFleur. If he can't move the ball, we got a white flag thing here. Like, you can't keep defending him. So that game's got a lot. Like, we know Russell's not going to last. But if Jordan Love struggles, you cannot sit there. By the way, CJ Stroud, no offensive lineman, can't run. Rookie play caller, rookie coach. Game 1, good. You can't be in a place 4 years and complete 55% of your throws. I don't want to hear about Christian Watson's not available. Give me a break. So, I mean, I think that game is actually, whatever the word is, the French word for so ugly it's attractive, that's Green Bay, Denver.
It's interesting. So I come from a startup culture with Action Network, right?
Yeah.
You're building a really valuable, strong, incredible business with the volume.
Yeah.
If you're in a venture-backed business, one of the best phrases I ever heard, some of the folks who bankrolled Action when we started is, are you being intellectually honest about what you're looking at? Meaning, can you look at the data? Can you make a decision not based on what you want it to be, not based on what you think it could be if X factors hadn't impacted the numbers? It's like, can you look at the numbers? Can you say, okay, this is what's happening? And then can you make decisions about the business going forward based on those numbers, regardless of your input into deciding how you got to that point, or if it's going against what you believed it should be? Same goes if it's going well. Like, can you be intellectually honest about examining what you see in front of you? Can the Packers be intellectually honest about Jordan Love if he continues to be a 55% completion rate passer who misses open looks?
Yeah, I mean, I think, my favorite saying, by the way, you mentioned your favorite saying. It was so funny. Somebody the other day, I have a plaque in my office, and they saw the plaque and they got all excited. They're like, where did you get that? Amateurs chase the sun and get burned. Power stays in the shadows. That the smartest people are strategic. The amateurs want to get noticed and get headlines. The smart people do all their business behind the scenes. And I don't know why I brought that up, apropos of nothing. I do think Green Bay, they're decent people. And the problem sometimes, there's a reason there's a lot of money in New York and in Wall Street and in tech world. People are harsh and they're brutal. And I don't think the Steelers could move off Kenny Pickett for 3 years because he's a Pittsburgh kid, because it's the decency of the Rooneys. And I think Green Bay is going to stick with Jordan Love because that's what good people do. They give young people a chance. And I think Pittsburgh and Green Bay, this solid, foundationally respectful, they're always looking for value. They're the guy at a nightclub wearing Dockers. They're not cool, but they're probably the richest guy in the room. And I don't think the Steelers can be honest about Kenny Pickett. And I don't think the Packers for a year or two. And by the way, like if I'm both, I'm drafting a quarterback this year, not first or second, third round quarterback. I just want somebody in the room to compete with them. There's plenty of talent. But I do think sometimes what's hurt Green Bay and Pittsburgh is this unwillingness to just be harsh. And harsh in our businesses, sometimes it works. Like, I've got to make a horribly hard decision. You're fired. It sucks. But sometimes it's what's needed in professional football. Like Bill Belichick. Bill, we'll build you a statue. You're tone deaf. We got to get off Bill Belichick. That seems incredibly hard. But Philadelphia fired Andy Reid. The Cowboys fired Tom Landry. You know what? Both the Eagles and the Cowboys did just fine. And we both love Andy Reid. So I think the Jordan Love question is, do they have the stomach for it? I don't know if they do.
It's a hard question to answer. And after 5 games of data, nobody is going to be ready to do that. After, 12 games of data with Kenny Pickett, nobody is going to be ready to do it. But I think you can do it after a season. That's when you start to get a full data set, right? When we talk about betting, all of the data I give you is going to be based on a data set of at least 100 games. You need to have like a full picture to understand, is it a trend? Is it something that someone can overcome? Is it something that people were overperforming? Like, what were the factors, right? And then all of a sudden you have the full data set and you've got a much cleaner look at what the real pattern is. And if someone's going to change it or not. And so then you got to ask yourself, with someone like Jordan Love, what was the missing factor? We've talked about this before. Jalen Hurts in year 1 was good, but there were questions about how good of a full quarterback he could be, how good of a passer he could be. Year 2, you get A.J. Brown, you get Devontae Smith comes along. If you're a quarterback, you need to have weapons you believe in. You need to have weapons who can make you look better. You need to have weapons that you feel comfortable throwing a 50-50 ball. Same thing with Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs. Josh Allen, his first couple of years, was not nearly as good as he was when he got Stephon Diggs, right? And then all of a sudden, his game changed. I think there was hope that Justin Fields would be that with DJ Moore. I think the Packers are going to have these questions about Jordan Love if he doesn't get a full season of Christian Watson being a number 1 caliber receiver. They're going to have to make a call. Do we have to get a receiver? Is Jordan Love someone that we believe can grow into being a great quarterback?
By the way, you like the Bears this week?
Well, of course I do. I mean, it's a wise guy spot. I was funny. I was talking with my co-host Simon Hunter on the favorites this morning, and I had told him on Tuesday, I feel like the wise guys are going to be on the Bears. And then on Thursday, we always do this segment called Sharp Calls. And we're like, the wise guys are giving us feedback on what we talked about on Tuesday. And they all liked the Bears. And it's a lot of the same principles we've been talking about, right? The Bears are undervalued. They're a terrible team. Meanwhile, you got the Raiders coming in. Should the Raiders be 3-point favorites against anybody, right? They weren't even 3-point favorites at home against the Patriots. And all of a sudden they're going on the road. They're a badly coached team with a backup quarterback who's been in the league for 15 years. Like, this is not a scenario where they should be a field goal or more favorite. So, yeah, wise guys are going to be on the Bears.
As always, Chad Millman. It's good seeing you.
Always a pleasure, brother.